The Gliese 876 star system was, by galactic standards, profoundly uninteresting. It possessed a few rocky planets, a smattering of gas giants, and an asteroid belt notable only for its stubborn refusal to coalesce into anything more significant. It was precisely this lack of significance that had led the Galactic Federation, in its mild and often bewildering wisdom, to assign Outpost Omega-7 to the human species. Humans, the galaxy had collectively sighed when they stumbled out of their solar system. Not aggressive, not particularly advanced, and possessed of a bewildering array of fleeting passions. They were, to the efficient and focused Kyler, a species of cosmic butterflies, pretty in a chaotic sort of way, but unlikely to contribute much to the serious business of the galaxy. Omega-7, therefore, was less an embassy and more of a distant, dusty attic, where one stored things one didn't quite know what to do with. For the 57 humans stationed on Omega-7, life had long ago settled into a rhythm dictated not by urgency or ambition, but by the slow, grinding gears of interstellar bureaucracy and the even slower drip of terminal boredom. Their vital needs were met by automated systems. Food paced, breathable air, recycled water, the essentials were covered. Entertainment feeds were spotty cultural exchange programs with other species had dwindled to an annual, painfully awkward video call, and the official directive was simply to observe and report on the profoundly uninteresting Gliese 876 system. They had observed, they had reported, for 50 standard years. The reports, initially detailed and hopeful, had over decades become exercises in creative writing, describing the subtle variations in cosmic dust, cloud formations, or the imagined social lives of silicon-based lichens on Planet 3. Then came the Great Silence, as second technician retired, but everyone was technically retired from active duty. Aris Thorne called it. It wasn't an official silence. It was just that no one had anything new to say. The observation deck, once a hub of activity, now mostly hosted elaborate games of zero-gravity darts played with magnetically reclaimed scrap. The science lab, pristine and gleaming, saw more use for brewing questionable alcoholic beverages than for stellar cartography. It was in this fertile soil of utter, soul-crushing boredom that the first seed of the project, as it was informally known, was planted. It began, as many human endeavors do, with a simple, "What if?" Commander Eva Rostova, whose official duties had devolved into approving increasingly outlandish supply requisitions, found herself staring at a dormant plasma conduit. "What if?" she mused to lead engineer Ben Carter, who was trying to teach a maintenance bot to juggle. "We rerouted this through the defunct gravitic array, just to see what happens." Ben, intrigued by anything that wasn't juggling bots, had shrugged. Why not? Got anything better to do? They hadn't, and so the project began. It had no grand purpose, no hypothesis to test beyond, will it do something cool? It was fueled by decades of pent-up ingenuity, the kind that flourishes when rules become suggestions and oversight is a distant memory. Meanwhile, hundreds of light-years away, aboard the Kyler Prime observational cruiser, Intrinsic Logic, Sub-Monitor Groll was having a very different kind of day. The Kyler were a species that thrived on data, on predictable patterns, on the calm, unwavering hum of a well-ordered universe. Groll's job was to monitor peripheral systems, the galactic backwaters, for any anomalies that might, in the fullness of time, require a modicum of attention. The Gliese 876 system pinged. Not an alarm, not a warning, just a flicker of energy that was odd. It was a localized, repeating spike of exotic particles and gravitational distortions that had no natural source. Groll adjusted his ocular sensors, ran a diagnostic. The energy was faint, almost negligible by galactic threat standards, but it was undeniably artificial, and it was emanating from the vicinity of the human outpost, Omega-7. Curious, Groll subvocalized, his multifaceted eyes blinking slowly. The humans, are they progressing? The thought was almost amusing. He filed a low priority report. Minor, localized energy fluctuations, Sector 7G, human outpost Omega-7. Recommend passive scan by nearest patrol vessel if convenient. Convenience for the Kyler arrived 3 standard months later in the form of the scout ship Query's End, helmed by investigator Thel and his assistant, analyst Vix. Thel was a Kyler of considerable experience, mostly in debunking false alarms from overeager submonitors. He anticipated a faulty human generator or perhaps some poorly shielded piece of their primitive entertainment technology. Human Outpost Omega-7 approaching, investigator, Vix reported, his voice flat and devoid of inflection, as was the Kyler way. Energy signature confirmed. Still irregular. Irregular is the human specialty, Vix, Thel replied, not bothering to look up from his own console, where he was reviewing the schematics of a typical human fusion plant. Primitive, but usually stable. Prepare for standard contact protocol. Remind them of Federation energy emission bylaws, and try not to sound too condescending. They are notoriously sensitive. Omega-7 looked just as underwhelming up close as it did in Federation databanks. A collection of utilitarian modules clinging to a central asteroid, scarred by micrometeorites and faded paint. No grand orbital structures, no bustling spaceports, just quiet. Their hail was answered by a voice that sounded surprisingly cheerful. Omega-7 here. Well, hello there, strangers. Didn't expect visitors. Coffee's on if you have mouths for it, or, whatever equivalent you use. Thel's mandibles twitched slightly. Query's End to Omega-7. We are a Kyler investigative vessel. We have detected anomalous energy readings from your location. We require access to ascertain the source. There was a brief pause, a muffled sound of someone saying, "Oops, they noticed the Ripple Rider," followed by, "Just tell them it's the new toaster oven." Then the cheerful voice returned. "Anomalous energy. Oh, that might be our new atmospheric recycler. Bit temperamental. Come on down, we'll show you." Thel exchanged a look with Vix. Atmospheric recycler, highly unlikely to produce gravitic distortions. This was going to be tiresome. The landing bay was old, echoing, and surprisingly clean. They were met by a human male with wild gray hair and a grease-stained jumpsuit, Ben Carter, and a woman with a look of weary amusement, Eva Rostova. "Welcome to the end of the line, folks," Ben said, grinning. "Don't mind the mess. We're in the middle of spring cleaning." Investigator Thel introduced himself, his optical sensors taking in the jury-rigged cabling running along the corridors and the faint, almost imperceptible hum that wasn't on any standard outpost schematic. "We are here about the energy signatures." "Right, the signatures," Eva said, sharing a glance with Ben. "Well, as I said, the recycler has been acting up, but we've also been working on a few recreational projects. You know how it is. All work and no play makes Jack a dull boy." Thel did not know who Jack was, or why his dullness was relevant. Recreational projects that generate exotic particles. "That's the one," Ben chirped. "Took us ages to get the particle flow just right for optimal results. Come on, the main lab's this way, or what used to be the main lab. Now it's more of a workshop of wonders." The workshop of wonders was a chaotic symphony of repurposed equipment. What was once a botanical research bay now housed a large, circular metallic platform surrounded by glowing coils and emitters, salvaged from everything from the ship's old long-range comms array to, Thel noted with a flicker of alarm, what looked suspiciously like components from a decommissioned emergency beacon. Wires snaked everywhere, held down with adhesive tape and optimistic prayer. In the center of the platform, a faded beach ball was slowly rotating, not on the platform, but about a foot above it, shimmering slightly as if seen through heat haze. "This," Eva announced with a sweep of her hand, "is what we call the Ripple Rider. Mark 7, I think. We lost count." Thel stared at the beach ball. Vix began running silent scans, his usually placid face betraying a hint of confusion. "And what is the designated function of this Ripple Rider?" Thel asked, his voice carefully neutral. "Fun," Ben exclaimed. "Mostly, and to see if we could. We got really, really bored." "Boredom," Thel repeated, as if tasting an alien word. The Kylo did not experience boredom. There was always data to analyze, systems to optimize, protocols to refine. The concept of unallocated processing time leading to this was unsettling. Vix approached Thel, his optical sensors wide. "Investigator," he whispered, a significant breach of Kyler professional decorum. "The energy readings from this device, they are not just anomalous. They are manipulating localized spacetime. The beach ball is not merely levitating. It is in a contained, self-sustaining gravitational distortion." Thel focused on Vix, then back at the humans, who were now explaining how they'd had to borrow a bit of the station's primary shield emitter to get the oomph they needed for the Mark 6 version, which had accidentally teleported all their spatulas into the janitorial closet of a passing freighter. They seemed to find this anecdote hilarious. "You are warping spacetime for recreation," Thel managed, his logical processors struggling to categorize this information. It was like discovering a child playing with a live fusion core because the bright colors were appealing. "Well, yeah," Aris Thorne said, wandering in with a mug of something steaming. He was the station's former xenobotanist, now apparently a consultant on advanced gravitational engineering. "Started with trying to make toast pop up with a bit more flair. You know, give it a little loop-the-loop. Got a bit out of hand from there. Turns out, once you get past the initial dimensional schisms, it's quite intuitive." Dimensional schisms. Intuitive. Thel felt a processing error cascade through his mind. "We were thinking of upscaling it," Eva said, gesturing towards a much larger, mostly incomplete framework in an adjacent bay. "Zero-G surfing on controlled temporal waves. Imagine the tourist revenue." Vix made a small choking sound. "Investigator, the potential energy output. If this device were to malfunction, the resulting cascade could destabilize this entire asteroid, possibly the inner planetary orbits." Ben scratched his head. "Yeah, we had a bit of a wobble with Mark 4. Fried all the lights on this deck for a week. Had to wear sunglasses indoors. But Mark 7 is way more stable. We even put in we call it a whoopsie button. Mostly." Thel looked at the whoopsie button. It was a large, red, ominously unlabeled button from a discarded fire suppression system, connected to the central console with what appeared to be speaker wire. "The energy signatures we detected," Thel said slowly, his voice several octaves lower than usual, "were not from an atmospheric recycler." "Guilty as charged," Eva grinned. "So, are we in big trouble, or are you guys impressed?" Thel did not answer. He was watching Ben, who had picked up a modified data pad. "Hey, check this out. We figured out how to use the micro-distortions it's kind of like skipping stones, but across probability fields. Watch." He tapped the pad. On the Ripple Rider platform, the beach ball flickered. For an instant, it was a pineapple. Then a Kyler technical manual. Then a small, yapping dog with a jeweled collar, which then vanished to be replaced by the beach ball again. "Still a bit unpredictable," Ben admitted. "Sometimes it brings back things that are a little bitey, but mostly it's just random stuff from, somewhere else. Keeps the supply runs interesting." Thel felt Vix sway beside him. The implications were staggering. These humans, isolated and starved of conventional stimulus, had not descended into apathy or madness, as many species might. Instead, their innate, restless ingenuity, untethered by conventional scientific caution or even a basic understanding of the forces they were manipulating, had led them to casually poke holes in the fabric of reality itself. Not for conquest, not for knowledge in the Kyler sense, but because they were bored, because it was something to do, because why not? This wasn't primitive technology. This was something terrifyingly different. It was genius without guardrails, curiosity without consequence, power wielded with the casual abandon of a child building a sandcastle against an incoming tide of cosmic forces. The human trait was not mere intelligence. It was ingenuity born from terminal boredom, a relentless, chaotic drive to create, to alter, to do, simply to alleviate the absence of external pressure. It was the realization that a bored human was potentially more dangerous, more unpredictable, and more reality-shatteringly creative than a desperate one. "We need to file a report," Thel said, his voice barely a croak. This was no longer a minor energy anomaly. This was a code one, galaxy-wide something. He didn't even have a word for it. "Report away," Eva said cheerfully. "Want a demonstration of the bigger one. We haven't powered it up fully yet, still waiting on a shipment of what Aris calls negative enthusiasm capacitors, but we can give it a little juice." Thel and Vix backed away slowly. "No, no demonstration is required." The report Thel sent back to Kylo Prime caused a system-wide logic fault in the central processing network. It was quickly elevated, flagged with so many warnings that it reached the High Council of Galactic Federation oversight within hours. The initial reaction was disbelief. Then, as Kylo deep space arrays were subtly retasked and confirmed the ongoing, alarmingly powerful and utterly whimsical energy signatures from Omega-7, disbelief turned to a very specific kind of dread. Humanity, the quaint, distractible species, was capable of casually tearing reality a new orifice for giggles. The aftermath was swift and unprecedented. Galactic policy towards Earth and its scattered outposts didn't just change. It underwent a panic-driven metamorphosis. Funding, previously trickling, now flooded human systems, not for weapons, but for cultural enrichment, interstellar hobbycraft initiatives, and creative stimulus programs. Fleets of ships arrived at Omega-7, not with weapons drawn, but with offers of galactic art residencies, universe-class engineering challenges, safely contained, of course, and unlimited subscriptions to every entertainment channel in the known galaxy. The Kyler, specifically, spearheaded the Human Engagement Initiative, a massive project aimed at ensuring humanity was never, ever bored again. They proposed complex, galaxy-spanning engineering projects, theoretical physics problems that had stumped the best minds for centuries, even elaborate, entirely fabricated, ancient mysteries for humans to solve. Anything to keep those terrifyingly innovative minds occupied with something other than seeing what this button does to spacetime. Omega-7 became a legend. Some called it the boredom engine. Others whispered of the playful guards of Gliese 876. Humans, previously a footnote in galactic encyclopedias, were now viewed with a mixture of profound respect, utter confusion, and a healthy dose of existential terror. They were the species that could, if left unattended for too long with insufficient distractions, accidentally invent something that could unravel the universe, and then wonder if it would look cooler in blue. Commander Rostova eventually accepted a prestigious and extremely well-funded position heading up the Galactic Grand Challenge Idea Festival. Ben Carter was given a near-infinite budget to tinker safely. Aris Thorne became a sought-after, if eccentric, consultant on recreational metaphysics. And the galaxy learned a valuable lesson. Some fires are best kept burning brightly, lest the unattended embers ignite something far more spectacular and terrifying. The human mind, when faced with the abyss of nothing to do, would simply start building its own, more interesting abyss.